Welcome to Unspoken Affairs. There are moments in life that creep up on you when you least expect them. The kind of moments that don't just pass, but settle deep inside you, reshaping the way you see the world forever. Some moments are so quiet, so small, that you barely recognize their importance until much later, when hindsight makes them shine like warning signs you had ignored. Others hit you all at once, like a sudden storm breaking open the night sky, tearing through everything you thought you understood. I had one of those moments not too long ago. And even now, I can still hear the sound that changed everything for me. It was just after midnight. One of those nights where the world outside seemed hushed, wrapped in silence. The house was calm, except for the soft hum of the air conditioner cycling on and off. I was lying in bed, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, half distracted and not really paying attention to anything in particular. My little brother Samuel's room was right next to mine. His light had been off for a while, so I assumed he was already asleep. There was something comforting about those late-night hours when the world seemed to pause, as though time itself was catching its breath between one day and the next. But that night, stillness didn't last. At first, I barely noticed Ida. Faint murmur, low and muffled. It could have been anything. The TV left on downstairs, a neighbor pulling into the driveway with their radio turned up too loud. Or maybe just the creak of the old house settling into its frame. But the longer I lay there, the more my ears tuned into the sound, and the clearer it became. And then, in a way I wish I could forget, I realized exactly where it was coming from. It was coming from my parents' room. My breath caught in my chest. I froze, listening harder, trying to make sense of it. It wasn't the sound of voices raised in an argument. It wasn't the usual noises of people moving around. It was something else, something that made my stomach twist. At first, I told myself I was imagining things, that I must be half asleep and misinterpreting what was happening. But the longer I listened, the more undeniable it became. I knew that voice was my mother's. Now, let me be clear. This wasn't the first time Samuel or I had overheard our parents being close. Over the years, it had happened often enough that we'd learned to tune it out, rolling our eyes, joking to each other later, and blasting music through our headphones when we needed to. It wasn't pleasant, sure, but it was just part of life. Part of growing up in a house where our parents, even after all those years, were still affectionate. But this time, something was different. Something was off in a way I couldn't put into words at first, and then heard it dot another voice. Not my father's. It was lower, rougher, a man's voice speaking in hushed tones. The words were too muffled to make out, but there was no mistaking it. There was someone else in that room with her. That was the moment it hit me. The realization slammed into me like a punch, knocking the air out of my lungs. My mother wasn't alone. She wasn't with my father. She was with someone else. For a few seconds, I went completely still, as though moving would somehow make it real. I wanted to be wrong. I needed to be wrong. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. The pieces started falling into place faster than I could stop them. The secrecy. The way she had been acting lightly distant, distracted, glued to her phone when she thought no one was watching. It had all been leading to this. I had been too blind, too trusting to see it. Lying there in the dark, I felt a strange kind of stillness settle over me. It was the kind of silence that comes right before a storm, the kind that warns you something is about to change forever. And I knew in that moment that nothing in my life would ever be the same again. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying the sounds I had heard over and over again, like a cruel echo. I tried to convince myself I had misheard, that there was some rational explanation. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face and felt that sick weight in my stomach. When morning came, I stumbled out of bed with heavy limbs and burning eyes. The house smelled like fresh coffee and scrambled eggs, like nothing at all had changed. But the moment I walked into the kitchen, I felt it, the tension, thick and unspoken. Hanging in the air, my father sat at the table, his face buried in the newspaper, calm and oblivious. He had no idea. No idea that the woman pouring herself coffee across the room wasn't the person he thought she was anymore. I watched my mother carefully. Her posture was stiff, her fingers wrapped too tightly around her favorite blue mug. When she turned to greet me, her smile didn't reach her eyes. For a second, just a flicker, I saw something there: guilt, unease, maybe even fear. And then it was gone, replaced by that practiced, casual tone. "Morning, sweetheart," she said. "You slept in today." I mumbled something back, grabbed a piece of toast, and sat down at the table. Across from me, Samuel pushed his eggs around his plate without eating. He looked pale, tired. Our eyes met briefly, and that was all it took. He had heard it too. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. That day was just the beginning. Over the next week, I became an unwilling detective in my own home. I noticed everything I had ignored before: the way my mother's phone seemed glued to her hand, the way her face softened when she looked at it, the way she flinched when it buzzed on the counter. I noticed the sudden errands, the grocery trips that took longer than they should, the afternoons when she left work early with no explanation. It didn't take long for Samuel and me to piece it together. We started writing down the times she left, the times she returned, every odd behavior we caught. It felt sneaky wrong, but it also felt necessary. We needed to know the truth, and then Samuel found it. One afternoon, while Mom was distracted at the door, she left her phone on the couch. Samuel picked it up just long enough to see a name flash across the lock screen. A text message. Rowan Graves. An old family friend. Someone who had been in our house, sat at our table, laughed with us like he was part of the family. Someone who had no business sending my mother messages that made her light up in a way I hadn't seen in years. That was the moment we knew. The hardest part wasn't discovering the truth. It was watching my father live in blissful ignorance, smiling at a love that no longer existed. It was sitting at the dinner table while my mother carried on like nothing had happened. It was knowing that the life we thought we had was already broken. Samuel was furious. I could see it eating at him every day, darkening his expression, tightening his jaw. He couldn't stand the silence, the pretending. And one afternoon he snapped. It was a Sunday. Quiet, ordinary, until Samuel stormed down the hallway and threw open our mother's bedroom door without knocking. "Who is he?" he demanded. Mom froze. For a second, fear flashed in her eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it came. She set her phone down, folded her hands, and tried to control the conversation with a calm voice. "Samuel, I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," he said, his voice trembling with anger. "I know everything." For a moment, the room felt like it was holding its breath. Then she sighed, lowered her eyes, and said words that broke something inside me. I didn't mean for it to happen. Samuel's fists clenched. "But it did. You let it. You chose this." Her eyes welled with tears. She tried to explain about how distant she felt from Dad, how unloved, how Rowan had made her feel seen again. But her excuses only made the betrayal worse. "You didn't just hurt Dad," Samuel said, his voice sharp. "You hurt us. You made us live in a lie." Then he walked out, slamming the door behind him. I stayed silent, watching her. She didn't try to call him back. She didn't try to take it back. She just sat there in her guilt, tears running down her face. And that's when I realized she wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was only sorry she had been caught. Secrets have a way of unraveling no matter how tightly they're held. Some slip quietly, spreading like cracks through stone. Others explode, tearing through everything in their path. My mother's secret exploded. And when it did, nothing in our family would ever be the same again. That was just the beginning. What followed was weeks of tension, broken trust, and a decision that would change our family forever. If you're still with me, thank you. Stories like this aren't easy to tell, but they're important. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear how everything unfolded: the confrontation with my father, the fallout that followed, and the choice that nearly tore us apart. For good. Because sometimes the truth doesn't just set you free. Sometimes it shatters everything you thought you knew.